Hello. What? Hey, boy. This is Keota here, coming with another tutorial. This one's going to be on workflow and arrangement. Project file is going to be, there's going to be a link for it in the description. It'll link you to my Gumroad, where you can either pay $2 or you can join my Facebook group, which is, the link for that's also going to be in the description. It's Keota's Kitchen. Yeah, it'll be free if you're in the group. There's going to be a lot more freebies too in the future. There's going to be one a month and then 3 things like this. And yeah, so this is what it sounds like. And then I'll go into the hows and whys of things. So it's just a little skit, you know, but I started it yesterday, and I used a particular workflow that I'm about to go over. So basically, for the most part, I separate most of my sound design stuff from like a creative project, although even still I end up doing like a little bit, you know, it's like hard to avoid, you know. But my point is, any sound design that's in any of my projects is like a tip of the iceberg in terms of the sound design that I do in other projects. Like, you know, I just will bring in bass samples, for example, and then like maybe I'll filter them a little bit more, process them a little bit more. But in this thing, it's a bass sample that I had already made, and it's in this group called pre-resample. So basically I'm going to unfreeze this. I'm going to, like I do some filtering here, like Volcano. I put the DC offset on to get rid of this, like, which I got from like tube distortion, which is pretty gnarly. And then, little saturator, a couple things here. So you just have these long phrases, basically, and I like long phrases because then you just have a lot to work with. And then, let's see. And now, real quick, that Volcano is basically, this is a notch filter. It's a high pass and a low pass in parallel. With the X, the first XY, the X is controlling the frequency of both, and the Y is controlling the peak or the resonance of both. And then on the second XY filter, just the X is controlling both filter frequencies again, except one of them is negative. So basically, that's controlling the width of how much. The width of the notch. So basically what I would do is I would freeze that. Once I'm happy with it. And then this here is that frozen audio, I believe, if I'm correct. And then what I do is I go and I arrange some grooves in like a one note bass line, basically, but it's not the final bass line. So here's what it sounds like with just that. Oh, the group is muted. the point here is to just get a bunch of cool grooves out, and then again you freeze it or record it, and then that's actually what this here is, like these purpley colored clips is the frozen version of this or some iteration of this. And then I basically go around, this is when I start with the bass line. So this one is an unwarped approach, although this part here is warped. Let me rename that, warped. And then this is warped. Now to go into the differences of the two, it's really simple. Here is unwarped, but I just had one note per, like there's no time warping whatsoever. There's no pitch bends. So like I just sort of transposed it to make it a bass line, 3 semitones, 2 semitones, 0, the root being F, -1 semitones, etc., etc. So it sounds like this. Let me make sure this is off here. This is warped here. I did mention that before, but still. And then also it sounds sick when you turn on that reverse reverb, oldest trick of the book, but it's always pretty dope. So to do that, you just friggin' freeze and flatten this once you're happy with it, or record it, and then reverse that, put reverb on it, freeze it, flatten it, and then reverse it again. Then you have this otherworldly effect. But yeah, I like working this way because basically once you arrange like a one-note bassline groove session where you just sort of jam out and like you don't really concern yourself, like the point is to not concern yourself with like too much. Like basically you just do something until it like sounds decent enough for like 4 bars, and then instead of nitpicking and deleting things like a lot of us are inclined to do, especially in this type of music, just copy and paste and then make changes to that, and then just keep doing that. Like as soon as you're kind of comfortable with how it sounds for like a few phrases, just copy and paste it. And that's exactly what this is on this part here, this one. And then all I did was I chopped that up, and also what this does do is you're basically sort of weeding out the parts of that sample that you don't like, so then when you go to mess around with it here, it's only really left with like better bits and things that you think you'd actually use. But moving on to the warped one, I'm going to make another thing here, drag this down just so that I'm not losing it. But yeah, basically what I've done here, actually let me play it by itself. So basically this is set to unlinked for the envelopes, and I don't think it matters if it's on loop or not, if this is the whole thing. And then this is where I'm going to copy this down here. And then it's always going to do this, and it's going to start over at the end. Oh, maybe it's not. Hit loop. Wait a minute. Wrong loop. Here. So, to make this not sound like so chaotic and stupid, you chop it up. I'll chop it up like I did here. But then the thing is, you have to, you can only drag it like this if you want it to maintain where it was in that time in the envelope. If you were to just drag this and move it over here, it's going to start over from the beginning. But if you drag it within here, it's going to stay where it was in the envelope. So let's see. So you basically just cut it up as you go along. Yeah, so that's the idea for that. I'm just going to put this back here, though, because I'm not going to mess around with this anymore before I collect all and save. So those are the two main approaches that I really wanted to go over here. And then as far as just, like, the key thing, really, is to just keep copying and pasting your shit instead of deleting it, which I literally just did. At least I deleted some of it. But, just copy and paste more than you otherwise would, and just keep doing that. And then same goes for the percussion stuff here. I have all this frozen. I think I can still drag it around. Yeah. What do I hear? The drumming. Yeah, so, but don't be afraid too to like move the percussion around a little bit to like, you know, go with like some groove you're experimenting with. But also don't be afraid to copy and paste that and let it like draw out for a little bit longer. Because like I think, like let's see where the, yeah, like these are ghost snares, I think. And some parts of this tune, there's more ghost snares than other parts. Or tune, it's a skit. I think it's a slightly different groove over here than it is over here, maybe. Also, rides come in here. That's another thing too. Just freaking change it up. But think like honestly, it can sort of help to think about it. Like, imagine you were making the most generic house song in the world. There's definitely something to be learned from genres like that and music like that, because a lot of times they just throw in the most simple thing, like a freaking cymbal on the downbeat. It always sounds dope, but it's not like it took any like crazy tricks or wizardry. Oh, and also changing the snare too. Versus, here, I'll play it from here. And also making stupid changes to whatever vocals you have. And in this case, I think it's some lady saying bend over and twerk, which I thought would be fun to work with. But it's a splice thing, which like costs money, and I didn't want to just like give it away in this frickin' thing because that would be immoral and probably also illegal. So I only included this like really, really over-processed version. Also, it's worth mentioning that it's good to keep an eye on little things like this, just so you're not like having little clips here and there, like literal like pops, I guess. And that's just just something to be aware of too, because that can, when you like release a tune and then you like hear a little click sound in there that you really did not intend, it's definitely annoying. And it's just stuff like that. It really does make a difference, I think, in the final picture. If there's none of that going on in your tune, but that's the type of thing where like you do a good job and no one would notice. But if you did a bad job, obviously, maybe not everyone would notice, but some people would. And once you notice, you'll never not notice ever again. You'll be like, shit, I released that tune and it sounded like that. Had those clicks in it. But yeah, and then another thing I like to do is that, like, here I got these breaks. One I didn't use because it really didn't fit with this Arabian break. Like the like swing is so wonky and like not really on the grid half the time in this that like I wasn't really concerning myself that much with this going on here with the warp points, but either way it just didn't sound good. I mean, it could if I were to put more time in that, but I liked this one more. But it's actually throughout the rest of the tune, it's just the... Oh, it's unfrozen already. It's this one. Oh. Which sounds like this. Also, I should add that I keep forgetting to, like, when I demonstrate a thing and I solo it, I have these hotkeys to my side chain. Right now it's off because I pressed the hotkey, but I do hashtag, which is Shift 3. See it? There you go. Sorry, now it's off. Now it's on. But I think it's good to have like a small arsenal of elements that you always know you're going to use, and then just try and make those elements, like milk them as much as you possibly can. So in my case, obviously drums, bass samples, the drums consisting of like primarily a kick and a snare. I don't always use hi-hats. A lot of the times I'll just use a break sample like how I showed here and here. You know, throw a little cymbal in there. I usually have a ghost snare too. A lot of times I'll have a ghost kick, but I didn't in this one also. And I don't even know if I'm using that term right. I don't know if ghost means that it's not there and it's just being triggered by a sidechain, or if it means that it's like just a lighter hit snare or kick or something. But I think it means it's just hit lighter, because that's what this snare is compared to the other snare if I were to just solo this group. Yeah. And then just, you can get away with like copy and pasting if you just change it up after and you like make it unique, but still, you know, maintain some sort of a theme, whether it's melodic or rhythmic, and but just don't be afraid to copy and paste in that initial songwriting process. Like, and I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all of workflows either. Like, I picked up Ableton in like January, and I switched from FL Studio, and I've been experimenting with so many different workflows like the whole time. But this is still along the lines of what I would do in FL Studio. There's nothing really exclusive about this to Ableton. But for the most part, I would say that about wraps it up for this one. Again, you can get the project file for this for $2 on Gumroad. The link's in the description. Or if you join my Facebook group, you can get it for free. I also just released a sample pack like 2 weeks ago called Tackle Box, which has a lot of samples that are actually in this project file too, besides like these breaks and stuff. Because everything in the sample pack I synthesized, except for like maybe a couple recorded samples. But that is really it. So yeah, what did we learn here? I don't know. You tell me. All right, peace out.